You ever have one of those mornings where you step out onto your porch, cup of coffee in hand, sun, just peeking over the rooftops, and you feel just for a second like things are finally settling down? That was me, Daniel, ex-Army, proud owner of a service dog named Max, a face full of scruff and a tiny patch of peace in Willow Creek Estates, a place I'd hoped might finally feel like home after 2 decades dodging trouble in boots and camouflage. You'd think after everything collecting your mail would be the easy part of life, right? Well, turns out I was dead wrong, because in Willow Creek, the real battlefield wears a name tag that says HOA President. That was the day I met Karen, a woman who could turn a smile into a threat and a clipboard into a weapon. She zeroed in on me from the very first minute. Eyes narrowed, lips pursed like she'd just sucked a lemon, and for reasons only she could explain, I became her mission. Was it my military background, the American flag on my porch, or the fact that Max, my German Shepherd, walked beside me everywhere I went? Maybe it was all of it, maybe none. But I'll tell you what, it got ugly real fast. One morning I'm out grabbing my mail and the box is wide open, letters scattered like someone lost a poker game right there on my driveway. I'm kneeling to pick them up when I hear, "You really shouldn't get mail here," coming from behind me, cold as the steel on her gaze. I turn and there's Karen, clipboard in hand, standing over me like I'm a trespasser in my own front yard. She doesn't bother hiding her disgust. This neighborhood doesn't need your type cluttering it up. The board has rules. I ask her, my type trying not to let the anger crack my voice. She rattles off the usual. My decorated porch, my big dog, the flag, and now apparently even my mail is some kind of crime against the community. I want to lose it, but all those years in uniform taught me how to keep steady, so I just say, "You don't have the right to touch my mail. That's a federal offense." She waves me off like the law's a suggestion, not a rule. I wish I could say that was the end, but it was only the beginning. See, I checked my security cameras that afternoon. Something in my gut told me I should, and there she was, plain as day. Karen opening my mailbox, going through my envelopes and tossing most of them in the trash. Medical bills, VA letters, stuff you just don't mess with, especially if you know anything about what it means to come home with wounds folks can't always see. Watching her lips move on camera, muttering, "He doesn't deserve this." Not after what he did, honestly, that stung in a way that's hard to explain. Whatever she thought she knew about me, she was dead set on making sure I never belonged. That night I barely slept. That footage looped in my mind, and I just kept thinking, this isn't a petty squabble over grass height. This is my life, my privacy, my chance to heal. I decided right then that I wouldn't let it slide. Next morning, I put the video on a flash drive and went to the next HOA board meeting. That clubhouse was packed, retired folks, young families, Karen at the front, looking like she'd already won the day. I didn't say much, just plugged my phone into the TV and let the video do the talking. Dead silence. All you could hear was her voice on the recording, those words she'd spat as she dumped my mail. For a split second, you could see her mask slip. She looked panicked, not just annoyed. When I asked her point blank to explain herself, she tried to claim it was junk mail, that she was keeping things tidy. But there's only so many lies you can spin when the truth's up on a big screen. Then comes the twist. Tom, a grizzled old veteran who lives 2 doors down, a guy I figured didn't care for me much, stood up and shook his head. Disbelief plain on his face. Turns out he'd gotten his own share of grief from Karen over the years. And as the room murmured as Denise, the board chair, stepped in and basically told Karen she'd crossed the line, I realized I wasn't as alone as I thought. My voice shook a bit when I said I served my country for 20 years. I don't want special treatment, I just want respect. And you could feel the mood in the room turn sympathy, maybe even a little guilt rolling in like a tide. Next day, the whole neighborhood was buzzing. Some folks offered me quiet nods of support, others avoided my eyes. That afternoon, Denise came by nervous, almost apologetic, and told me the board was meeting again without Karen to figure out what to do. She sat on my porch, hands knotted tight, and said, "This isn't just an HOA issue, Daniel. This is a crime." She promised they'd remove Karen as president and report her to the authorities. Part of me felt relieved. Part of me just tired. You know what I mean? You get worn out fighting the same battle over and over. But karma, as they say, has a timetable. The very next morning, a police cruiser rolled up, lights off, like they didn't want to spook the neighbors. Two officers walked straight up to Karen's door. She came out arguing, voice sharp, but eventually her words ran out. Her precious clipboard slipped from her hand, landed in the grass. For a moment she just stood there staring at me like maybe I was the villain in her story. Then the officers guided her to the car, and just like that she was gone. Tom, the old vet, came over, just stood beside me. She had it coming, he said, and I nodded, even though the whole thing just felt sad. Watching someone get hauled away, it doesn't feel like winning. Not really. Denise called me later to confirm Karen had been charged with mail tampering, a federal offense, and she was out as HOA president. "We're sorry it took this long," she said. I thanked her, but the truth is, the apology didn't fix what had been broken. Still, there was relief, a weight off my shoulders. That night, for the first time since I moved in, I just sat on my porch with Max, feeling something almost like peace. But the story didn't end there. For a while, the neighborhood was awkward, folks, tiptoeing around each other, unsure of what to say. Then slowly things started to thaw. Tom showed up with muffins one morning, claiming his wife made too many. I knew better. A young couple brought over a sign they'd painted, "Welcome home," with a little flag next to it. I'm not used to that kind of kindness, honestly. Years in the service teach you to keep your guard up, but that wall started to crumble, brick by brick. At the next HOA meeting, no Karen in sight. The clubhouse was packed. Denise got up and said what everyone was thinking: we failed as a board. We let one person's bias get in the way of our job to make everyone feel safe here. She looked right at me and said, "Daniel, thank you for standing up." I felt all those eyes on me, got a lump in my throat, but managed to say, "I didn't do anything special. I just wanted what anyone wants: my privacy, my mail, my peace." There was this pause, then Tom started clapping, and pretty soon everyone else joined in. It wasn't a parade or a medal, but it felt healing. Afterward, neighbors swapped stories. Turns out Karen's reign of terror had touched plenty of folks, from snippy notes on mailboxes to made-up violations that vanished if she liked you. The board voted in new rules: no more lone wolf inspections. All decisions had to be public and recorded. Not a revolution, but a start. A week later, I got a call from the cops. Karen was facing charges, probably probation and community service. Not the end of the world, but enough to make a point. Rules are for everyone. That evening, I sat on my porch, Max snoring at my feet, watched the neighborhood come alive, kids riding bikes, Tom waving from across the street. For the first time, I felt something like belonging. This hadn't been the fight I wanted, but speaking up changed things for me and maybe for everyone. And you know, as the sun dipped below the rooftops and porch lights flickered on, I thought maybe Willow Creek Estates can still become the home I'd been hoping for. Maybe it takes a mess to bring people together, to remind you that respect is earned and defended, not just given. So here's the real question: where do you stand? Was justice served, or does this kind of HOA drama just tear communities apart? Drop your thoughts below. Let's hear what you think about respect, belonging, and what it takes to call a place home.